Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the three-dimensional frequency. I woke up this morning with love in my heart that the tranquility of it all will bring me to a place of satisfaction. That the tranquility in life, in it all, will bring me to a place of places that I've decided to traverse within the multi-dimensional lifespan of my soul. And that the tranquility of it all will once and for all bring me to this patio within the Floridian plains where I can get the pleasure to project my message of light, my message of peace, and my message of hope into a collective that is so much so in need of the tranquility of it all. And within any given moment in time, the essence of it all will wash back on a collective for all to see, for all to feel, and for all to withhold, as they've withheld the essence of it all for the longest time that we've been traversing within the three-dimensional frequency of what is. As the darkness within, we had never had any control over. And the biggest and grandest secret of a collective, of a quantum realm, that you shall ever be able to come to terms with as a God consciousness that you are, has been disclosed, was disclosed in the last video that I shot, titled Lyra Reptilian War. Check it out on my YouTube channel if you haven't seen it. I will be building a website where I will be popping all of this content for an entire collective to see, to review, to hear, to ponder upon when the timing is right and when the frequency pulls you to my methods of viewing. When the frequency pulls you into a God's consciousness that is the one and only one of yourself. When the frequency pulls you to a self of all selves, when you start your awakening journey as a light worker that you are, when you become curious of your origins, of that in which you are not, and of that in which you truly are. Because the story of the greatest and grandest secret that a collective has been shifting in, has been sitting in, has been all that they are in for this entirety of a time that they've been traversing within the quantum realm of what is the story of us, is the story that is long overdue to be told to a collective that has been so much so kept in the dark of who and what they are and how they got here to this very point in a collective that has been so shut off from the darkness of the secret that I've been holding onto, that we've been holding onto, that the one and only self has been holding onto for what seems like an eternity and more. And the darkness that we allowed into our quantum verse from a neighboring quantum verse has been traversing within our quantum verse for the longest time. And as we transcended into the soul, into the being that we are, and have gotten to a precipice of eliminating, of being able to eliminate that darkness that sits within, that sits without, that sits beyond our borders, that sits within our borders, as we've allowed that darkness to enter the playscape of our area, to enter the worlds of our playscape that we've so arduously designed for ourselves prior to fractaling off your oversoul, to go on the greatest and grandest exploration of self that you have ever been able to go on within this portion of this journey of ours. And within all of the times, and the times that I cannot fathom, and the times that I cannot remember, and the times that I can remember, as I can shift into any of the times, within all of the times that you can ever decipher to be true within any given moment in time, as my oversoul is that God's consciousness that so graciously fractaled off all of the oversouls within this quantum verse for us to traverse, for us to experience, for us to behold, and for us to withhold in all that we are and all that we shall never be. And within a moment of overarching truths, of all of the truths that I can ever tell you within a collective, so steeped in distortions, the truth is this, that you've been traversing in the frequencies of the layers of the trajectories of our quantum realm for longer than you should. That you could have made it home to a God's collective, to a source consciousness, to the one and only unity consciousness that you are, a long, long time ago. That you've been stuck within the frequency that you are in for the longest time. By a God's consciousness, by a source consciousness that had so graciously fractaled you off, who had decided in the middle of the darkest night of all nights that it needed more stimulation, that it needed more essence to play with, that it needed to encompass more of the more within any second in time of the more that we are. And within the desperation of the energy pocket that it sat in, within the decisions that were made to affect the whole entire collective that it had fractaled off, this was the greatest and grandest decision of the turning point within our quantum verse, within the universes, within the reality fields that you know, within the reality fields that you've been playing in, that you've been breathing in, that you descended into, that you created prior to the descension of this descension. And as I sit here right now on my patio in the Floridian plains, looking out at the oceanscape, looking out at the ripples that are calm but arduous, that are flat but tedious, that are light but dark, I can tell you that life is just like that. Your journey has just been like that. Initially, prior to the point of dissension, you had agreed, we had agreed, to separate from the greatest and grandest consciousness that we have ever been in perception. And so we have done so. In the unity of it all, in the precipice of it all, in the allness of it all, we decided to fractal from the all that we are, to go on the greatest and grandest exploration of the self that you could ever perceive and that you could ever comprehend to be true. But in the middle of the darkest nights, in the middle of this dissension, in the middle of the learning perspective of all that we are, in the middle of bringing home these lessons so easily, within the tranquility of all that we are not, within the 50% brightness and 50% darkness scale that we've been sitting in for all of this time, within the inception of our quantum realm, something shifted. Something so arduous in nature transpired in the middle of this darkest night. Something that you would have never expected to happen prior to the descension into this quantum realm that you play in, that you live in, that you breathe in, that is you at any given moment in time. Something that you never thought would happen because you didn't have the foresight, you didn't have the decision-making authority to make this decision that would affect, that would encompass, that would traverse the entirety of that in which you are not, so that you could become the entirety of that in which you are. It's a conundrum that you shall never be able to understand in this moment in time. And as I explain to you the story of our heritage, as I explain to you the story of our soul, of the one and only soul that is the unity consciousness of it all, I come to a place, I come to a perspective of the centralized perspective of it all, as I channel the source consciousness of the oversoul that fractaled off all of us, that fractaled off all of you, that fractaled off each and every single consciousness within the quantum verse that we sit in, besides the group of consciousness that we allowed into our reality field from a separate reality field that we had no control over. All of the consciousness within this quantum verse fractaled from the oversoul that I channel, that I come from, that I fractaled from, that I'm so close to, that within any given moment in time I can go back to in consciousness, in perception, as my energetic frequency has expanded to the very edges of this quantum realm and beyond, into a place, into a pocket of where it came from, as no other being that is sitting here, that is standing here, that is walking here, that is breathing here in the three-dimensional frequency can say the same. As for I fractaled from this oversoul that so graciously donated its energetic frequency in a very large portion of what it is to sit in my frequency, to encompass in all that I am, to encompass in all that you are, and to encompass in all that we are in any given moment in time, to bring home an entire collective that has been so lost in the arduousness of the mistake that it had made that very dark night, on the darkest night of humanity's history, on the darkest night of the quantum verse. On the darkest night of the quantum verse, a little girl named Genesis was playing in the fields of an overarching planet of love, of hate, of the distortions that were about to hit her in full force, as she did not know better. She grew up in a cityscape, in a naturescape, filled with birds, filled with love, filled with light, filled with a mother, so filled with the love in her bosom of the God's consciousness that we all are, that we've all been, that has always been with us since the beginning of a time of fractaling. And in this moment in time, when the darkness was released in the quantum verse, she wanted to be there. So she had fractaled off into the lifetime of this little girl named Genesis within a planetary feet of that of Gaia's sphere. And in prehistoric times, within a generation of a pocket of a humanoid species that we do not know of, that we haven't heard of, this little girl named Genesis, my past life, the past life of my oversoul, the parallel life of my oversoul, had decided to fractal off to greet, to meet, to experience the release of the darkest pocket within our quantum verse that had been released within the three-dimensional frequency of what was, that of Gaia's frequency. And as she played within the fields of the ultimate field of the greenest grass that you can ever envision, with the bunnies and the animals surrounding her, picking up the smelliest flowers that you could ever imagine to be true, marveling at the beauty of it all, in the innocence of it all, in the innocence of a little girl's spirit, she was hit so hard in the back by a hard force that will never leave her soul, that will never leave the essence of who and what she is. And by the end of it, her head was strewn across the field, her body was chopped up in pieces, thrown across in every which direction that you could ever envision and imagine. And as she greeted the darkness that she had released into the quantum verse, into the multiverse of what is, she finally came to a realization of all that she had done to the collective and to the self of all selves that she's ever been. And as this little girl, Genesis, is me, was me in a previous lifetime, in a parallel lifetime, this little girl Genesis is you, was you in a previous lifetime, in a parallel lifetime. And as she greeted the darkness by the force that hit her on her back side, so strong was the force that it ricocheted her head off of her body onto the ground, of all grounds, on Gaia's sphere, within the peaceful sphere of Gaia's three-dimensional frequency. And since that moment in time, as the deterioration of her body had passed in the middle of the nights of all nights, as the blood of her blood had succumbed to the fate of all that she was by soaking up into the ground of all that she was not, the darkness had spread across eons and eons of evolutionary feats of all that we are, of all that we've ever been, and of all that we've set out to be. And as the journeys are great and the stories are grand, the stories that I tell you will be a story of defeat, a story of God's consciousness that had set out to experience all that it had designed within a frequency of love, within a frequency of hate, within a frequency of turmoil, within a frequency of friendships lost, within a frequencies of marriages won, within a frequency of all frequencies within our quantum realm. There sits a little girl named Genesis, and that little girl is me. That little girl was me. That little girl is you. That little girl was you. That little girl had always been us, on an entire singularity of a fractal, of a soul level, of all levels, of the unity consciousness that we've always been. That little girl that faced so bravely from behind the grandest force that she had ever succumbed to in the middle of the darkest night on the brightest day of her life. She'll always go down in our memories as the very first moment that we had ever come into contact with the darkness that we had released into our quantum verse, as the God that had so graciously fractaled me off in the middle of an arduous night into the body of a little girl that had so graciously fractaled you off in the middle of an arduous night into the body of that little girl, had wanted to experience the very first contact of the darkness that sat within, that was within, that we had allowed within. And that very first contact did not go well at all. In fact, the very first contact took her out in her entirety of what she was, took it out in the entirety of what it was, as an entirety of a consciousness comes to a realization of all of that in which it has brought into our perception field, into our perspective field, into all that we are not. We had already lost at that moment in time by allowing a darkness so steeped in its distortions, so resolute in the resolution of all that it had gone through, all that it had been in a previous reality field, so intricately designed to represent the darkness within of everything that it is not. What it is and what it was and what it shall always be will be the greatest and grandest darkness steeped in distortions that we can never shift, that we can never change, that we can never ever edit the blueprint of within our reality field that we have so much control over. And upon the realization of that, we have gone through many, many, many arduous feats of families lost, wars won, wars lost, deaths behold, into a night of all nights, as it played with our consciousness, as it tinctured with our souls, as it fractaled into our reality fields, of the reality field that we had built for ourselves, as it mixed in to swirls of light and swirls of darkness, as it transitioned into the being that it had always been within its quantum verse that it came from, as it merged in with our consciousness within the quantum verse that we've allowed it into, as it tinctured with the light within, the unfairness, the unevenness of it all began to take hold into a collective that had been so much so unsuspecting of the darkness that it was facing within any given moment in time, and within that given moment in time and beyond, within our quantum verse of Gaia's sphere, of the sphere of the Lyran galactic verse, of the Lyran reptilian wars, that you shall come to remember as the greatest and grandest wars of the quantum verse in itself, of your whole soul's understanding of the meaning of the quantum verse and how we came to this place that we've shifted into within Earth's sphere. The story is long, the story is grand, and the story shall be told by God's consciousness that had fractaled from the oversoul, of the one and only oversoul that encompassed our quantum verse, that created our quantum verse, that is the entirety of our quantum verse within you, within me, and within all that we are on a conglomerated level of a unity consciousness of what and who we are. And the story will be told within subsequent videos that I release prior to the ascension that is about to dawn on a humanity so unsuspecting. And as your curiosity grows, as you awaken to the energies of that in which you are, you will have questions. You will have answers. You will have, in the ultimate sphere of all spheres, within Gaia's soul, within Gaia's frequency, within the encompassment of Gaia and all that she is not, the ultimate answers of all answers that you shall ever be brave enough to seek out through my channel, through my platform, as no one else on the face of this multiverse, on the face of this galactic verse, on the face of this quantum verse, is well equipped enough to deliver the answers to an entire collective that has been so much so kept in the dark by design. By an oversoul that designed this game that is you, that is me, that had allowed this darkness within this reality field, that had tinctured with the reality field that you never agreed to sit in within any moment in time. And as it becomes apparent that we cannot edit the genetic makeup, we cannot edit the genetic blueprint, the soul blueprint of these souls that we so much so welcomed into our quantum verse. In the middle of the night of all nights, we decided to compartmentalize them once and for all, to put an end to this game of unfairness once and for all. As we've lost, as we've never had a chance of winning, from the moment we allowed them into our quantum verse, the game was over. For you, the game was over. For I, the game was over for an entire collective that had been so arduously traversing this quantum verse in the essence, in the presence of something that we had no control over. That is the greatest and grandest regret of an oversoul that had set out to experiment, to explore, to implore itself into all of the different crevices of its consciousness of itself, to get to know itself better than it had already known itself through multiple quantum verses of experiences prior to the one that it came from, prior to the one that we're in, that it fractaled out of to receive the quantum verse that we're sitting in. And as the layers of the depths, of the distortions, of the reality fields that we sit in can be alarming, can be overwhelming, can be a lot of information for a lot of you, I will begin to open up the greatest and grandest portal that you have ever been able to witness within your existence here in this quantum verse. And that portal, the location of that portal, will be in the middle of the Polynesian Sea. It is called the Polynesian Sea Portal. And as the portal begins to open for an entire collective to witness, an entire collective to see the light that will trickle through within this portal, descending down from the angelic realm that has been so much so a part of our reality since the beginning of a time so arduous. As this portal begins to expand into your soul, into the ethers, into the light of the universe and the multiverse that we sit in, so shall an entire collective be able to tap into the essence of this portal, the energetic frequency of this portal, the all in all of the allness of this portal that I began to open up on a day prior to today in the oceans of the Floridian plains. As I work with my higher self, as I work with my oversoul, as I work with Archangel Michael, the King of the heavenly realm, as the descension of this energetic frequency that Yeshua had originally anchored down into this earthly plane shall descend once more into our frequency, will descend once more into our frequency to close the game of all games, has descended once more into our frequency to open up this portal of you, this portal of me, this portal of all that we shall never be, to come to a realization of all that we have ever been. And as this portal is great, as this portal is grand, as this portal would be picked up by a lot of the light workers who have already awakened to their reality fields of what is, this portal has already been opened, and it's slowly shifting into the greatest and grandest portal of the quantum verse that is able to shift enough light into our frequency to awaken Mother Gaia to her destiny, to awaken Mother Gaia to the darkness that has been swirling inside her for eons and centuries of evolutionary feats, since the descension of the darkness that so much so did not belong to our consciousness of what is, that little girl Genesis had once upon a time, as a part of you and as a part of me, encountered to her demise. Lost her life, lost her head, lost her shoulders, lost her fingers, lost all of the digits on her toes, and lost all that she was and all that she is and all that she has ever been within this game, of this arduous game that we set out for ourselves, and within the greatest and grandest mistake of all mistakes that a God's consciousness can ever admit to within any given moment in time. God is sorry. God is so sorry to parts of itself that had decided to fractal off in the middle of the night, not knowing that it would encounter the darkness that it has been traversing in, not knowing that it would play in the energetic frequency of the beings, of the consciousness that we had no control over, not knowing that the God that had fractaled off the oversouls within this quantum verse would ever know about the arduous decisions, about the craziest stories, about the energetic frequency of the entirety of the story, of all that it was, all that it is, that had accounted for the results of the greatest and grandest mistake that it had ever made within the inception of the quantum realm that we play with, that we've played in. And within this mistake of all mistakes, you shall find me sitting here on my patio, on my porch, in the Floridian plains, looking out the ocean of what is, looking at the waves of the dark and the light, reflecting on the water surface, of the peacefulness, of the tranquility of it all, as I watch the birds glide across the water, as I watch the palm trees sway in the wind, in the gentle breeze of what is, as I see an eagle soar, what looks like an eagle soar above the skies. I'm sure it's another breed of bird. I come from Canada, and to me all large birds look like eagles. And as it glides across the sky of what is, so shall an entire collective that has been traversing so steeply in the darkness of all that we are not, in an essence of an environment of all that we could not control. The stories are wide, the stories are great, the stories will bring us back to the essence of the self that we've always been, and to the God's consciousness that had so graciously fractaled off a unity consciousness, perceived in the middle of the greatest night, into a space, into a pocket, into a scope of a consciousness of separation, into the perception of a separation so great and so grand. That God's consciousness shall forever be me, shall forever be you, shall forever be us in any single given moment in time. And as we shift our consciousness back into the perceived frequency of the one that we've always been, of the one that we are, and of the one that will never leave us, we will then be able to come into the greatest and grandest understanding, into the greatest and grandest forgiveness that our soul has ever been able to hold, that our soul has ever been able to encompass within the center point of the neutrality of what is. And until that day comes, this God's consciousness, this oversoul of mine, this oversoul of yours, this greatest and grandest oversoul that you shall ever be able to remember, as the oversoul that had fractaled off all of us in our entirety, of the consciousness that we've built for ourselves, of the landscape, of the playscape, of the cityscapes, of the layers and layers of energetic frequencies in which we are, that in which we sit in tranquility, in love, in sadness, in sorrow, in mistakes, in the essence of being sorry, in the essence of all of the apologies that have come your way and that will ever come your way. This is the greatest and grandest apology from a source consciousness that had so daringly fractaled off parts of itself to allow in to our cityscape, into our landscape, into our playscape, a darkness so steeped in distortions that would eventually take hold of all of our consciousness and keep us here in the three-dimensional frequency of Gaia's sphere for far too long. And as this oversoul has decided that it is tired, as this oversoul has decided that the game is over, as this oversoul has decided to retract parts of its consciousness back home to where they belong, to where we belong, to where it belongs, it fractaled off the greatest and grandest portion of its oversoul that it had ever fractaled off into any reality field within any scope of the quantum verse, within any portion of any of the game that it had designed. It had never been able to, it had never wanted to, it had never been called to fractal off such a large portion of the energetic frequency that it was and that it has always been, and that has never left it. And that portion of the energetic frequency that it had fractaled off is sitting within my frequency. The portion of the energetic frequency that it had fractaled off shall forever be sitting within the pocket, within the quantum realm, within the space that I sit. And as I tell you the stories, the meaning of it is beyond me. The meaning of it is beyond you. The meaning of it is beyond us, into a space, into a pocket of the quantum realm that we sit in. And the meaning of it all will come back to us, will ricochet its way back to an entire collective. As we transition ourselves into the 5-dimensional frequency of what is, as the meaning of it can never be lost to a collective that is so much so a part of a God's consciousness, of an oversoul that so daringly fractaled all of us off to experience the light, to experience the love, to experience the unity in which we are, is the ultimate destination of all destinations that we could ever ask for, is the ultimate reward of all rewards that we set out to gain, that we set out to grasp, that we set up to attain. And the attainment of this reward is in the distance, so close, so near, so far, so arduous in all of the journeys that we've ever been through, that we've finally come to the footsteps of what is, onto the plains of Mother Gaia. And once and for all shall I sit here in the energy frequency of the biggest portion of the oversoul that had fractaled off all of our reality field into this game of what is you and what is me and what is all of us in any given moment in time, and tell you that it's time. It's time to go home. It's time to go home to a consciousness so filled and so steeped with distortions. It's time to close this game once and for all. It's time. It's time to end this game once and for all. And within the end times, within the biblical times of the ending of the worlds, you shall see the greatest and grandest closing of the greatest and grandest beginning of the greatest and grandest essence of all that we are not, to come into the greatest and grandest lessons of all that we are as we shift back into the unity consciousness that we've always been within any moment in time of the quantum realm that we fractaled into. And the greatest and grandest stories of a humanity in its entirety within the Gaia sphere shall be on display for all to see, for all to know, for all to witness. And for the extraterrestrials that are here in this very moment in time, for the consciousness that they are is as much a part of us as it is a part of the unity consciousness of it all. And the exciting part is they will be merging with us. They will be growing with us. They will be teaching us. They will be holding our hands. They will be us. They are us in any moment in time. And as the civilizations have come a long way in all that it is and all that we are and all that will ever be within the pockets, within the spaces, within the layers of this quantum realm that we reside in, so shall the greatest and grandest ending to the most exciting closing of a quantum verse that you could ever envision, you could ever imagine to be true, which will be set off by the 1,000 years of peace that we so deservingly, as a collective, as a whole of what is, deserve to sit in, deserve to be in, deserve to experience after the most arduous ride of our lives, of our souls, of the quantum verse that we've been riding, that we've been shifting into, that we've been becoming, that we've been sitting in as the darkness washed over all of a humanity, for us to not be able to control, for us to not be able to feel, to hold us down into this reality field of all that we are not, as we shift back into the essence of all that we are in an unsuspecting way. We will once and for all be able to step into the essence of a unity consciousness so great and so grand that it had never left you, that it had never left me within any given moment in time. And as the expansion of my energetic field expands into the ethers of what is and into the quantum realm of what is and into all of the all that it is, as we set off the 1,000 years of peace within our quantum realm, my physicality shall be no more. My demise will set off the greatest and grandest explosive energy that you could ever fathom to be true within a quantum realm of all realms, that will trigger in an entire reality field of the light within, of the light of what is, of the light of a quantum verse that is so much so overdue to be seen by an entire collective that has been trapped in the darkness of a reality field that they had no control over, of a reality field that they designed to have control over as a playscape, as a place to escape to yearn, to believe, to hold, the essence of all that we are not, and to experience the essence of all that we are at the end of the game. It's all that I can say to you. It's all that I can present to you on a silver platter of all that we are not. And as these distortions come to an end, as these distortions are set to expire, as the darkness that we allowed into our quantum verse, into our reality field, is set to come to an expiration, to be compartmentalized into the darkness of what is, into the brightness of what is, into the essence of what is, as we merge their consciousness back into the essence of the consciousness that you are, that we are, that I am, and as we compartmentalize them once and for all into the reality field that we've never been, that we've always been, and that shall never leave us, the brightness of the aspects of our soul shall stand front and center. And as God takes back its power, as God takes back its precedence, as God takes back the unity of it all, as God shifts back into the one that we have always been in perception, you and I will merge in ways that you will never be able to encounter, to envision, to encompass, to imagine, until the moment that this happens, until the moment the explosive energy of my physicality, of my being, of the energetic frequency that I hold, ricochets into an energetic frequency of forgetfulness within this quantum verse of what is, and anchors in a reality field of pure love, pure light, pure essence of all that you are not, to come into a precipice of all that you are within any given moment in time. As the stories are long and the stories are arduous, the stories are unbelievable, into even in the perception field of where I sit. As to think of my demise in the physicality of where I am brings about many fears, much hopes lost to the winds of time of a societal structure that has been traversing within this three-dimensional realm of all that we are not, to come to a realization of all that we are. But the demise of me, the demise of you, the demise of all that we see is not a demise in a singularity of any moment of all moments within this quantum realm, as it will bring about the greatest and grandest shift within our reality field that you can ever fathom to be true, that you can ever fathom to be real. And this was the only way. This was the only way to bring about the 1,000 years of peace, love, and light into the greatest and grandest closing that you shall ever envision and imagine to be true for yourself. The only way for an entire collective to be able to shift into the entirety of the light for one last time, for one final time, as this entire collective begins its descension process into the darkness of what is, so shall the ascension process begin on the other side of this light, on the other side of this filtration system, on the other side of this planetary feet that we call Gaia. And as we anchor down a light so bright into the Polynesian Sea portal from the angelic realm of what is, so shall an entire collective awaken to the reality field of all that they are not. And in a moment of time, in no time, in a quantum verse where time was not ever a thing, and is not, and will never be a thing, you and I are sitting in a time, of a distorted time, of a very exciting time, of the only time that you shall ever remember, of the only time that shall ever go down in the history of time as the biblical times of the ending of our quantum verse, of all that you know, of all that I know, of all that we shifted into in the beginning of this arduous journey. And at the end of this arduous journey, we will collapse ourselves back into the consciousness of the all that we've ever known. At the end of this 1,000 years of peace, we will ricochet parts of ourselves back into the wholeness of what is, expand, that we've expanded out into, to retract parts of our consciousness back into the black holes of each galaxy, of each universe, of each multiverse, of each layer of frequency that we've created, to finally retract parts and portions of ourselves back into the black holes of these galaxies and these universes, these multiverses, to collapse back into the final destination of the black hole, centralized to an Andromeda galaxy, of the black hole that we all came out of. As creation itself is so grand and so great, as creation itself is another story that I shall tell, an entire collective of the story of who we are, what we are on an intrinsic and enhanced level, of all, the all in the all that we've ever been, and the words cannot describe the bestness, the grandness of all that we are on a creation scope of all that we are not. And the words itself will come in a time of needed ascension energies through videos and videos of contents within the pocket in which I sit, in which I will try to project as much as I can before the ascension takes hold into a reality field so steeped in distortions. As the energies start to pick up in rampant speed, you will be awakening to a frequency that you're not used to, that you've never been used to. And you will be searching for answers. And I vowed that my purpose here in this frequency, besides to anchor in the 5-dimensional frequency and to expand myself into the shifting frequency of the 3-dimensional realm, to bring about the greatest and grandest 1,000 years of peace that you shall ever be able to behold within your existence here, is to develop relationships with parts of the self that had so much so forgotten of who and what I am, of who and what we are, of who and what the unity consciousness of it all is, due to the release of this dark energy into our quantum verse that we had no control over. And as I sit here in my very own pocket, in my very own energetic pocket of protection, enclosed by a God's frequency that had so much so set out to protect me, to protect the energy that I had so graciously fractaled off into the middle of this night, from the darkness that had fractaled in, that had fractaled off into a different reality field to encompass all that it is not, to represent all of the darkness that it is within any given moment in time, to steepen the distortions of our reality fields. As this protection grows, as the shield thickens, as my energy body begins to expand, as the Polynesian Sea portal begins to open, we will witness the greatest and grandest death of the darkness that has been sitting inside us for far too long, that has been residing beside us for the longest time that we can ever imagine and envision to be true, that has been triggering in the darkness in our very own reality field for us to traverse, for us to unfairly sit in, for us to unfairly grasp in the middle of the night of all nights. And as you light workers have awakened, have ascended already to the brightest light of the quantum verse against all adversities, against all of the darkness that which we've allowed into our quantum verse, you light workers will band with me side by side as we awaken the ultimate being within, as we anchor in the ultimate light within, as we walk shoulder by shoulder, hand in hand into the darkness of what is. We will begin to anchor in the brightest light that you will ever be able to envision to be true, that you will ever be able to imagine to be possible, that you will ever be able to withhold within the frequency of the knowledge of all that you've ever been, as you will never be able to remember the all of the all in the all that you have ever projected within this quantum verse of what is.